Oh, there we go. Now my mic's on. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is John. This is my channel, your Renaissance Man. What is it today? It is Thursday, March 19th, 2026. So, what are we talking about today? This is for Minnesotans in particular and anybody else interested in what's currently going on with gun laws, gun rights, all that fun stuff as the government tries to impinge on our rights and freedoms quite often. And we repeatedly have to go and battle for them and make sure that they're not taken away from us. I'm a lifelong resident of Minnesota, so that's why my interest in this video in particular, or this subject, I suppose I better say it as. So yeah, I don't consider myself a gun nut per se. I do own guns, plural. I do. It's not part of my everyday life. I am a concealed carry. I have been for a very long time, but oftentimes I don't carry on my person. It was more for a convenience thing, just so I could. Our yeah, our concealed carry law gives us a few more freedoms that, if you didn't have your concealed carry, it'd be more difficult to transport firearms and stuff like that. I do carry on my person occasionally, but I don't feel it necessary for me daily. So that's kind of where I'm at in the world. I do like to practice and train and shoot off, semi frequently, multiple times a year, but not like monthly or weekly. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I've been a gun owner all my life. My family's always had guns. They're more from the hunting background. I'm more for recreation and self, protection and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's a little bit of my background. So Minnesota right now is in the midst of passing legislation again for another gun ban and a magazine ban. And it's quite restrictive. And like I said, the main reason for this video is to get awareness out there, especially for Minnesotans. You know, when people hear about this stuff, sometimes we get a little complacent. It's like, oh, that's so crazy, it'll never pass. Yeah, I mean, you could have said that 10 years ago easily. But the way things are currently, it just takes an overriding majority, even a slight majority, or a few people just waffling on the fence to just slip over. And then the next thing you know, it's law. I mean, and even if you can say it's just not something that's just, that's no way. You can't make that stick. It's unconstitutional. I mean, all that is fine and good to say that, but once they pass it and put it in, now it's going to take years, possibly multiple years to unravel it and get it reversed. So, and that's, here's that kind of give and take with our legal system. It's like something that's probably most likely unconstitutional gets passed, and then it takes years to unravel it, and we should never be denied our rights. So I wish there was a way to challenge a constitutionality of a bill or a law before it's passed to prevent it from getting passed so we don't have to fight to get it back. Because we're supposed to never be denied our rights. And so therefore we are basically denied our rights while they're in limbo because we're in fear of prosecution for an unconstitutional law that's been put into place. And it's just, yeah, it's just a chunk of BS that just, yeah, it just grinds at me. So anyways, I was going to review some of the law and some of the hype, some of the parts that stick out on it, because it's these proposed laws get more and more extreme. In the past, we'd have stuff like a grandfather clause where, okay, this weapon is going to be banned, from this date moving forward. But if you own one, nothing legally is going to happen to you. It's just that you can't sell it, you can't transfer it, you no longer to buy a current version or buy it or buy or sell those between, whatever. But now they're writing into these proposed bills, laws, whatever you want to call them, basically that you've got so many months or days or weeks to come in compliance or you're guilty of a felony. And now it's, like either you got to surrender it, register it, registration is against, is unconstitutional. So, I mean, they're putting in all this unconstitutional language, but if it gets passed, like I says, then we're trapped in the legal system for years trying to unravel it. So I really want to get awareness out there for people to go out and rattle the cages of your elected officials to try and prevent this stuff from getting passed, and lean on them and say, man, we're not going to elect you if you pass this. And if they hear that enough, it does work. It really does. I have seen stuff change in my lifetime due to pressure, because these people ultimately they want a career in politics. And if they feel they're going to get elected out and they got enough, if they got enough pressure from it, you can get them to cave. I mean, I've seen stuff in the past where you know darn well these laws were passed because of the way they sugarcoat it so the there would be no public outcry. They throw a little sugar in there for everybody else, like, we're all going to give everybody a $500 check. And then they raid a bunch of money and give it to a bunch of undeserving people and whatever, without going into great detail. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. So, we got to quit being so complacent. We got to speak up. We got to lean our elected officials to make sure this stuff never gets into law to begin with or never passed. Because, like in our state, it's the Democrats are always kind of on the fringe of being in control or not in control, and sitting there. Our Democrat and our Republican Party is really weak. Um, and I mean, I'll give the Democrats credit for that. They're highly organized. They're usually pretty strongly united on their front as far as their voting, and you know what they're going to vote for. And the Republican Party, it just isn't as tight knit. It isn't as so. Even when you say, "Oh, we got a majority," we got one or two more than the Democrats. Doesn't matter. You see Republicans turn all the time. They're not as there's a lot of Republicans in the party that are we call rhinos. And if you're unfamiliar, I mean, we hear that term rhino all the time, which spelled RINO, which means Republican in name only. And by that they mean that they're wearing that as their party, but they don't necessarily vote on party lines. So you can't really trust them. So that's the significance of when you hear somebody called a rhino, if you've never put that together or never understood what that meant. So, I mean, there's rhino Republicans anywhere. The Republicans aren't as strong as a party as the Democrats are when it comes to unity and, knowing what they're going to vote for, So it's even we have a slight lead, meaning like the Republicans, and I only mean in this regard, trying to prevent a gun law from getting passed. You can't guarantee that it's not going to pass. It just so yeah, so even if you have a Republican representative, still lean on them and say, "Man, don't you dare pass this thing. We're going to make it tough for you to ever get elected again." And you basically got to threaten their job. And then you got to encourage more people to call in and email whatever. And another thing you can do, which is really important in this state, is let me find, is it this one? Nope, not that one. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, where did I save that? No. Oh my gosh. Anyways, we got one group in Minnesota. What did I do with it? Jeebus. Open. There we go. So, this is the one group in Minnesota that, first of all, I'm not affiliated with them in any way. They're not a sponsor. They don't pay me to say anything. Anything I say is not their words. I am not connected with them in any way, shape, or form. But, anyways, the Minnesota Gun Caucus owners, this is the one group in Minnesota that actually fights for you, boots on the ground type thing. Um, they start legal action. They sue for our rights and all that kind of stuff. They're a group that's run by a lawyer and all that kind of fun stuff. And so they actually go out and overturn laws and fight for us, in the courtroom. And the reason I emphasize all that is because there's other groups, I'm not going to call out names, but there's other groups that like to scream and say stuff on the internet and collect your money, but don't exactly do as much, and some of them you can legitimately say they don't do anything. So I'm only going to say that this is the group you want to align yourself with. Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. These are the guys that actually make a difference. The other names of the other groups are all, they're all slightly worded differently. The colors are always gold and black for Minnesota Gun Caucus owners. So that's usually the quickest way to decipher that group, with quick recognition visually. So, anyways, help follow those guys. Follow those guys on social media. If you're going to donate money to anybody, donate to them, especially for the local cause. They're the ones that are going to make the biggest difference in our life. So let's dive into this thing a little bit. It's really depressing, and like I said before, you can say, well, it's too extreme. They can never pass it, that kind of stuff. Minnesota, we're teetering right now on the ability to pass anything. So it's not unlikely that it won't get passed. It's not 100% that it will, and it's not 100% that it won't. That's the sad thing. There is no comfort in this right now. We don't have a safety net on this one because we have a governor that's not on our side. Most of our elected officials are Democrats, and they're highly against this. Like I said, they're structured, they're organized. There isn't like an independent Democrat that speaks out once in a while and says, "Nope, this is bullcrap. I'm not going to stand up for this." We don't have that in the state. So let's see, which one is this? This is the weapons ban, not that. Let's see. Da-da-da-da. So this is the actual gun ban. Minnesota HF 3433. So if you look on here, why is that floating? Oh, I see what it's doing. Okay. This is a break. This is the actual bill as it's proposed right now. So like I said, Minnesota HF 3433. And it starts out with specifically naming guns like AK-47, for example. Okay. And next we got Beretta AR-70, Colt AR-15, Daewoo, on and on. And there's not very many of them. And so, and I can understand where that may give you a little warm, fuzzy feeling like, oh, I got some oddballs that aren't on here. Well, and that might help you in a legal battle, because it's usually, sometimes it can be very hard in a legal battle to get you on the all-encompassing part of a bill or law where it says then any other firearm that carries these features, for example. So, but who wants to go into a legal battle for your rights? That's people with deep pockets. Most of us don't have the money to fight a legal battle, to fight for our rights, unfortunately. And so therefore, a lot of us end up, having to roll over, because in fear of, being in such an expensive legal battle that we lose everything we've worked for. It doesn't take long to deplete all of your money, savings, whatever, and basically end up with nothing, that's a scary thought. So anyways, lower, as we get deeper down here, there, now we got that gone. Okay. So then it starts to list firearms with certain features. Basically the features that all these specific firearms have. Like they got SIG arms 550, 551, but it's like there's other derivatives. I'm not going to help the people writing this thing and give them more information, but there's other derivatives from SIG that would fall into this type of category. And, H&K, they list H&K 91, 93, 94, but you can get lost in the prefixes and the suffixes and the model numbers, and just, so that can bail you out sometimes. But then they go further to say any firearm that is another model made by the same manufacturer as one of the firearms listed in the clause, and it has the same action design as one of the listed firearms, and is redesigned, renamed, or renumbered version of the firearms listed in clause. So that's basically saying, so like I said, SIG 550. So say it didn't list the 551. I'm not going to list their other numbers because they can dig around and learn their own. So say it didn't list 551. Well, then this would fall under any firearm and is another model made by the same manufacturer, so forth, and listed firearms redesigned, renamed, or renumbered. So you could easily say a 551 is basically the same as a 550 for all intents and purposes, and only have some slight differences. So then this part of it ropes it in, just like when it says Colt AR-15, how many different manufacturers, or how many different manufacturers make an AR-15, and that's where it says down here, renamed, renumbered, that kind of stuff. So they're trying to have this all-encompassing thing. They start off with these and then kind of use that as an example, and then they spin off wider and try to rope more in. And then also enhancements including folding retractable stock, adjustable sight, case deflector, which that means, say like on an AR-15, you have that little bump right next to where your casings eject and that deflects it. You know, that of course in and by itself does not make it a more dangerous weapon, but it ropes it into their definition. And that's what they're trying to do, is have as many, overword this as much as possible so nothing can escape this. Because in the past, some of these weapons bans, gun companies have went out and used the exact verbiage to create a firearm that circumnavigates all these little nuances. So they're trying to kill it with, trying to make sure they have enough overkill to just smother it. Shorter barrel, wooden, plastic, or metal stock. It's like, so anything with a wooden, plastic, metal stock that it's like larger clip size. Of course, there's another bad term that's not used properly. Clip. These guns that they're talking about use magazines, not clips. Different caliber or bayonet mount. Any firearm that's been manufactured or sold by another company under a licensing agreement with the manufacturer of one firearms listed in clause, entered into after effective late 1993, Chapter 326. So there we go again. It's to grab other manufacturers that are using licensed designs like the AR-15. There is multiple different manufacturers of the AR-15. So that way you rope in another manufacturer's name for basically the same style rifle. The weapons listed in the clause are weapons in the importation of which are barred from Bureau of ATF, Department of Treasury. Okay. Semi-automatic military assault weapons. There's that assault weapon thing, which the term is just bogus because it doesn't really, the Supreme Court has already said that it doesn't really have a definition anyways, it's a bogus term that it's clickbait. It gets people riled up, or at least the media tries to use it that way. Semi-automatic rifle that has the capacity to accept a detachable magazine. It has one or more of the following: pistol grip or thumb hole stock. Any feature capable of functioning protruding grip. So like a vertical foregrip or something on the non-trigger hand. So yeah, so like a forward grip, a folding or telescoping stock. So this is in outside of the, like the SBR type stuff. This just means even if it's a 16-inch rifle or shotgun or whatever, long barrel with a folding or telescoping stock, it's still roped in there. So this isn't an SBR term. This is for anything with a folding or telescoping stock that also has, that's called a military assault weapon. A shroud attached to the barrel, or that it partially completely encircles the barrel, allowing the bearer to hold the forearm with non-trigger hand without being burned, excluding a slide that encloses the barrel. So yeah, your forward grip that wraps around a barrel completely, that ropes it into this. A flash suppressor. None of this stuff makes a weapon more deadly. So it's not like they're going after those features to justify the ban. Darn well they're using this verbiage so nothing can escape the ban. Folding, telescoping, thumb hole stock. We already saw that. Shroud. Semi-automatic shotgun. Semi-automatic shotgun that has one or more of the following: pistol grip, thumb hole stock. Got that again. Protruding grip on the non-trigger hand. So some sort of forward grip that's a vertical grip of some sort. Folding, telescoping stock. Fixed magazine capacity in excess of 10 rounds. So any shotgun that can hold in excess of 10 rounds would be part of this ban. And there's that magic number, 10 rounds. It's, so much of this stuff has been designed on the fly that has no backing of any source. They just decide anything more than 10 rounds is, large capacity or whatever they want to call it. Ability to accept a detachable magazine, which doesn't include a lot of shotguns, but there are a few. Shotgun with a revolving cylinder. I forgot the brand, but there's a couple that have, ones that have a tube, when you have a tube for a forward tube for your shotgun shells. There's ones that have multiple tubes and you can rotate between them. Conversion kits, combination of parts which a semi-automatic military style assault weapon can be assembled if those parts are in possession or under the control of the same person. So then you're guilty of this just by owning parts. Semi-automatic military assault weapon does not mean any firearm described in this paragraph that has been made permanently inoperable. So if you were to torch the receiver, for example, that is inoperable. Semi-automatic military style assault weapons prohibition. For the purpose of this, appropriate law enforcement agency, it is unlawful for a person to transfer, own, or possess semi-automatic military assault style weapons. Does not apply to government. So, of course, or government officer, agent, or employee, member of the armed forces, United States peace officer. So we got the exclusion there. Anybody that's an officer of the government is exempt from this. The manufacturer, United States law enforcement, the transfer of a semi-automatic military style assault weapon by a dealer. Current owners. Now, here's where it gets ugly for us. Current owners, certification, ownership, semi-automatic military style assault weapons. A person who legally owned or possessed a semi-automatic I'm gonna quit saying that whole mouthful. Before January 1st of 2027, who desires to keep ownership or possession of this device must request certification of ownership of the device from the Bureau. So the BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, appropriate law enforcement agency by May 1st of 2027. So here's where it gets weird. So if you own any of the following that they want to outlaw, okay, and you owned it before January 1st of 2027, you have until May of, provided this passes, of course, it hasn't passed yet. Not trying to be all black pill yet, but we gotta stay awake, people. May 1st, 2027, you have until then to basically register with the BCA. Okay. So the person who does that, once they have their certification, safely and secure store the device pursuant to regulation by BCA, agree to allow appropriate law enforcement agency to inspect the storage of the device to ensure compliance within the subdivision. So now you're giving so once you register it with the BCA, you have now given law enforcement permission to enter your home and inspect. Okay, do you see how ugly this is getting? Very draconian. You know, this is big government. Then you have to renew it every 3 years. And you know what happens when you don't renew stuff? Then you're in violation, and then you're now a felon, and then they have a right to come find you. See, now, and once you've registered it, now they have a list to track you. So then if you don't register, renew it, now you got somebody that they can go check on. And that's maybe be probable cause to do a search because you didn't renew your certification. We have Jim Jones here. Jim Jones. What an appropriate name for all this. Anyways, and he owned an AR-15. He registered it, and now he hasn't renewed his certification, and we don't have any record of him surrendering it. That could be just cause for them to get a subpoena. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just adding up, adding the pieces up here together, and that may warrant, that may justify a warrant to go inspect your home because they have the right to inspect it. So they could probably inspect to see if you still own it or want to talk to you because you've agreed to this process by getting this certification. So once you've agreed to this process, now you're already giving up your rights because you agreed to it. And that's what protected some people with the SBR thing that the feds were trying to do, is they were trying to give you this grace period to, let you do it for free. You just have to register it. Okay, now they got a list of everybody that's got an SBR, or it's most likely an SBR. And now they have, so then if it goes back to being illegal again, they can go back after and they already know where to start. And you've agreed to certain things by doing that process. So once you've entered the loop, it's really hard to get out of it. And so if you go down this road out of pressure and fear of, man, they're going to charge me with a felony, they're going to stick me in jail, I got to just comply with this. But now even if it becomes unconstitutional to law in general, you've already agreed to this process and surrendered part of your rights by getting that certification. So be aware of that. I mean, granted, if you don't get your certification, this does go into law, you could be facing a felony. So there's really a horrible thing that's going to be weighing over us if this passes. So a person acquiring semi-automatic rifle, blah, blah, blah. So you must surrender the device. If you don't do any of this, you must surrender it to the appropriate law enforcement for destruction, modify it to render it permanently inoperable, or remove the device from the state. So give it to somebody that lives out of state, a friend, a buddy, sell it to somebody out of state, whatever. But they're going to want proof of that somehow. This is all if you decide not to get your your weapon, your firearm certified. You're going to have to do one of those three to not be guilty of a felony. So, so if they do not elect to certify ownership of the device is required, must adopt regulations to specify how a person who lawfully owns a semi-realistic style this device is not being used. Implement certification system. Penalties. Okay, so here we go. So if you don't follow the certification process, this is kind of what it's going to. A person who violates subdivision 2, 4, blah, 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 is guilty of a felony, may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 5 years to payment of a fine of not more than $25,000 or both. So yeah, so they could put you up to jail for up to 5 years and fine you 25 grand. That would be the harshest outcome, which for most of us, that would just destroy our lives. That's not something we can gamble on. Person who knowingly violates subdivision, guilty of a gross misdemeanor. Person who is convicted of a second or subsequent violation is guilty of a felony. Notwithstanding prosecution, conviction, of violation, Effective date. So this section is effective August 1st, 2026, and applies to crimes committed on or after that date. That's provided this passes. It has not passed as of yet, meaning today's date, March 19th, 2026 is where we're sitting at. What else? It might be a good time to switch over to the magazine ban, because that's the root of this, this beast right here, the gun ban portion. Yeah, it's an ugly animal. It's not something we want to even get past. You can go look all this up on the state website. It's easy to find with the numbers, HF 3433 MN. You can just Google search Minnesota HF 3433 and you will probably be the first thing that pops up. You can read this for yourself. So this isn't just, what we call assault weapons. There's a lot of sportsmen's rifles and stuff and shotguns that fall into this category also. And this will overlap into pistols. So it's not like a barrel length thing. So something that is being sold as a pistol that carries the same features will be under this also. So there isn't a barrel length that's exempt from this. It's all these features combined, one of these things. So yeah, it's a stinky pile of doo-doo. Just say that. So this is the mag ban. Minnesota HF 3402. Large capacity means any ammunition feeding device, large capacity, It's back to the old more than 10 round BS, which how they came up with 10 rounds. Somebody just pulled that out of their butt at some point, and moving forward, they just decided anything more than 10 rounds was large capacity, even though there's plenty of firearms that are sold with magazines larger than 10 so wouldn't that be standard capacity for that firearm? So that's where some of this stuff has points you can argue. How do you define large capacity? And that's when you get into history and tradition and stuff constitutionally. But there again, this is a lot of the same basis as the firearm ban. You're going to have to register it. And then you have to subject yourself to potential inspection and certification, and then the same penalties. You could be guilty of a felony and all that stuff. But there again, it's the 10 round deal. Anything more than 10 rounds is going to fall under this. Anybody currently with large capacity, surrender device to law enforcement, modify the device so it can no longer operate, permanently alter so it can no longer accept more than 10 rounds. So yeah, or you got to register it, and then you have to renew your certification and I mean, that's what they want to do too, is they're trying to give them ways that if you don't keep renewing it, now they have just cause or reason to come in and seize it because you have illegal property that's subject to a felony charge if you own it illegally. So now, we have the right to go get this because it's a felony level crime. That's why we're going to go knock on your door, see if you still own it, and we're going to look for it. And if we find it, we're going to charge you with a felony because you didn't register it or you didn't renew it. So it gives you all these parameters to fail, so you lose it forever. So if you get lazy with it, having hard times in your life, just escapes your memory, whatever. You no longer certify, it's not yours anymore. And you're now dancing with the devil and potentially going to face a felony. It's just, it infuriates me that we're having to fight for our rights, our constitutional rights again. It's not, yeah, it's just such an ugly thing. But, anyways, remember these guys, Minnesota Gun Caucus owners, these are the guys that actually fight for us. These are the guys that actually make a difference in the state of Minnesota. Support these guys before anybody else. Like I said, there's a lot of other people on the internet that scream and yell and make it sound like they're doing something for you, and they'll take your money and they really don't do anything. Like we have elected officials like that. They like to point out all the faults and say, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. I'm like, and I'll confront them. Well, what are you doing? Well, we don't have the money. We don't have the ability. I'm like, then what good does it do to point it out if you aren't going to fight the fight? You're the one that's in that position to fight for us. And you're going to tell me you can't do anything. So then that tells me you shouldn't have your position. If you don't know how to fight the fight from your position when you're an elected official, then you shouldn't be in office. So I got a big bone to pick with a couple of Republicans right now in Minnesota that are that way. They are on social media all the time. Look what's happening. Look what's happening. Look what's happening. Now I'll get on social media and I'll confront them. It's like, what are you doing about it? Well, we don't have the money for lawyers. We don't have the resources to do this. Then why aren't you out finding people of like minds, organizing us, providing leadership, and structuring a group of people that are going to go out there and fight for this, making them aware? You obviously have donors and people that help you get into office. You just have to network. Do your damn job, people. Screaming about it, that's not doing anything. That's what guys like me do. We scream about it because that's all the power we have. We can get on social media. I don't get any money for this. I don't make a dime off of this stuff. This is just me trying to protect our rights in general. I mean, if you want to support the channel, it would be greatly appreciated because this just sucks time out of my life and doesn't make a dime. So if you can support us anyway, I'd greatly appreciate it. Just a like, a subscribe. The littlest thing helps a small channel like this the most, and I can keep making information for you guys if you do like this kind of content. So anyways, support Minnesota Gun Caucus owners. Lean on your politicians, even if you got some stubborn Democrat in your place that doesn't, is going to vote against this. Lean on them anyways. You got to let them know that you're paying attention. You got to let them know that, hey, I'm watching you. I'm going to start an organization. We're going to get more people to call and say, you're getting voted out if you keep doing this. There's strength in numbers, and, and that gets into, and that's like, there's another strength of Democrats, and I admire them for that. And that's where conservatives, I'm going to say Republicans, because Republicans are a loose-knit bunch of people too, but say the independent conservative type people, we're a lot of independent self-thinkers, we don't like people telling us what to think. We like to think on our own, but then we're also kind of a lot of lone wolves. And there may be a lot of us out there that have the same feeling and the same desire and the like mind for what we think is right and wrong, but we don't get into large groups and show up and make a stink and raise a lot of noise. And for some reason that gets a lot of attention sometimes. And that's where we're falling. That's where we can fall behind. And that's why they sometimes say the silent majority. That's what that refers to. Meaning there is a group of us out there. And there's a lot of us, and it's getting bigger, thankfully. But you don't know we exist. Like me, for example, when I get polling for stuff for anything, I do not answer it. I do not answer polling. And I know the liberal side loves polls, and they love to give a lot of weight to it. And those people love to share their opinion on everything and let everybody know. And then when you see election time, they have these big polling, the numbers are scattered wide on the polling, and you're like, oh my God, do we even have a chance? And then we end up winning, for example, the person we're supporting. And it shows you how inaccurate polling is, because I think a lot of us just don't like polling. It's just like, I don't want to give you any more information about you. I don't know what you're going to use these numbers for. I don't want to give you information because I don't trust the person coming me looking for this information. So, and I get the same, and I get that kind of feeling from a lot of people that I talk to and are in my life. So it's kind of good because they don't always have an idea of how many of us are out there, and it hurts them trying to figure out their strategy sometimes, which is great because we don't want their jobs to be any easier to take away our rights, because it's a slippery slope, and you can talk about the magazine ban, and the hunters can say, well, I never use anything more than 10 rounds. I get your point, but we have to stand together with firearm stuff, because every time they chip away at it, once they get a foothold, they expand more and more. And it just gets bigger and bigger, and it gets more encompassing. And now you become somewhere like Australia or the United Kingdom, where you can only own, it starts to have a specific list of what guns you can own. You can own this over under 12 gauge shotgun, and you can only own an over under because it only holds 2 rounds at once. You can no longer own a pump shotgun or something like that. It gives them a foothold. It gets them entrenched, and then it gets harder and harder to unravel it. So when you minimize these things that they're putting in are trying to implement through law and legislation, and you say in the moment it doesn't affect you, don't worry about it. It will affect you. Their ultimate goal is to take it away completely, but they have to pick away at it slowly, because if it's too aggressive, they get too much attention, and then it does sink. But now they've gotten to the point where all this drama and media and stuff, they got enough people ramped up on the left that will buy into all that drama. And they love to hear these extremes. They love to hear that, yeah, we're going to barge into your home and inspect your home if you're not, storing that weapon properly, or if you forgot to renew your certification, your license for it. Now we're going to come in and take it. They love that draconian crap. They love that. That gets them whipped up. That gives them warm, fuzzy feelings. They love big government. And our side that's the biggest thing behind us. We don't like big government. We want the way the government was intended by our forefathers. You're here to assist us. You're not here to run our lives. You're here to just implement things that aid our lives, make our lives easier. Fire departments, law enforcement to an extent, helps roads so we can transport, so we can drive, so we can, travel. That stuff helps our lives. This stuff is just spinning out of control to the point where they're trying to put us in a box, and feed us the gruel and just keep the machine on and just, suffer and love it type thing. So you guys got to speak up, at least get involved with the groups that are actually making a difference, like Minnesota Gun Caucus owners. If you can't do anything else, at least support them. Because they're the ones, like I said, there's the ones that actually start lawsuits. They end up in the courtroom, all that happy, fun stuff. And me, for example, this is the most humbling thing in the world. I've done YouTube before. And to do a channel with nobody watching and do a live stream, I can see right on the screen right there, I got 0 people watching. And it's humbling because nobody's watching you, and you still want to make a difference. And you just hope that eventually somebody's going to hear you. And eventually somebody will. But when you give up, nobody hears you. So even if it feels futile at first, it's the first step, that wins the marathon. If you don't take the first step, you'll never win the marathon, you know, but it gets easier as you build up and you get more and more, take more steps. You're that much closer. So like I said, as hard as it is to just sit here and make a video and know that nobody's watching. Oh, Lordy. Cause I've done YouTube before and I've had a following on my other channels, and it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. It doesn't really reward, the only reward is that the feel goods, feeling that you're leading the fight, doing the right thing type deal. So anyways, God bless you all. If you see this, thank you for watching. I appreciate it greatly. If you give us at least a click, a like, a subscribe, any of that little stuff that helps us with YouTube. I'm looking at doing daily videos and just doing news topics, not necessarily gun law, but just stuff that crosses my plate that's of interest to me. Um, I follow a YouTuber his name is Sticks and Hammer, and I've watched him for years. And his channel, he's not to gossip about sticks. he's a good guy. He's got problems right now. And, and we don't want to see him fall apart, but I kind of feel like we need more people out there, because YouTube in itself, for the people that are more grassroots, it's not really financially rewarding, and it sucks time out of your life. And so it just kind of feels like it's, I don't know, my turn to step up. I got the equipment. I got the time. I can do some of this, you know? So maybe I can help. That's my only intention right now. See if we can help get the word out, a few more people. So, because the mainstream media is heavily biased. It's a nightmare for getting truth out of the mainstream media. And the one endearing thing is their ratings are suffering. They're going backwards. People are waking up. I mean, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. We got a, you know, CNN, MSNBC, all the giants of cable news from the 90s and the 2000s, they're falling apart. And it, rightfully so, they should be. They're heavily biased. They should be dissolved. Vote with your remote. Click them off. Don't watch them anymore. Find an independent creator, independent content creator that you enjoy. Me, somebody else. I don't know. Step away from mainstream media, clear your head. Because ultimately they're there to make money. They're there to help the people that help them, that pay their bills. It's not pure news. It's not truth. It's not a delivery of information. It's propaganda. And I'm not here to help that in any way, shape, or form. My goal is to steer away from that as much as possible. Of course, I'm going to have my bias, and you'll figure that out. If you watch me more, you'll know which way I lean. It'll be very obvious, because they don't need help on that side. There's plenty of people screaming. There's plenty of people screaming for the left. So, and there's more and more screaming for the right. So I'm not a screamer though. So I just want to get the word out there as best I can, just to help out in some way, shape, or form. Because I don't have the ability to do much else, but I can fire up the YouTube. I do have enough gear to make some videos that are, you know, of average quality, not terrible, good audio, good video, you know, at least it's got the stuff that, at least it addresses some of the problems that people talk about when they complain about watching other people's videos. It's like, oh my God, the audio was so terrible. I couldn't stand it. Or the video was so bad. It looked like he was in a black hole and I couldn't see anything. So I at least got some of that stuff going, where if I can dial in the rest of it, maybe we can build this into something. But like I said, I'd like to do something daily, just cover topics of interest, kind of like Sticks and Hammer does, since he's kind of fallen to the wayside right now. Hopefully he returns back in full force and gets his life back together. We're rooting for him, of course. So, as a fellow clanker with the sticks, I hope you're doing well, buddy. And, you know, I'm not a deeply religious man, but I do believe that there is a higher power. And yeah. Anyways, starting to repeat myself and wander, which, like you said, doesn't matter as much when nobody's watching. Hopefully we look back on this someday and like, yeah, I remember your first video when you started doing this daily. Yeah. Nobody was watching then. Well, a year from now, a week from now, will there be more watching? I don't know. So, but what you get when you get viewers, you get accountability, and then you got to kind of keep to a path. So you won't be able to sit here and waffle and mumble about complete incoherent BS like I'm doing right now, because you'll have people like, okay, if you're going to keep doing that, I'm going to tune out. You got to keep your shit together, man. So anyways, I don't know what else to say. I had a good day today so far. I went out and went to the post office, got a hot chocolate, thought about what I was going to do today. And I just like, nope, today's the day. We're going to start making videos again on this channel. This channel hasn't really taken off. So anyways, I might do a short video just talking about that, since this is at the tail end of a specific topic. People will probably click off once they get past the gun stuff, if they get all the way to the gun stuff, because I kind of ramble and repeat myself a lot. And, you know, It's just the way it is. So anyways, I'll sign off like I do on all my other videos. God bless you. Thinking about you. Hope you guys stay safe. You know, find like minds, stick together with them, support each other. Support the people that are helping us and support the people that are going to make a difference for us. That's a huge thing, you know? And I really love music. So I wish, I wish music wasn't copyrighted, because all we can do is play with this music that isn't copyrightable, or whatever you want to call it. Isn't copyright protected, free music, or whatever they call it. There's some of it that's tolerable, but man, I would love to buy the rights to a few songs so I could use them, because I love music. I love adding it to videos. And all my favorite videos that I've made, I've put, you know, music from like Jimi Hendrix or something to something appropriate. And it's just like, can't share it because you get marked with copyright infringement, and they just make it impossible for anybody to see it because you're stealing music, basically, is what you're doing, which I understand that part. Just wish there was an easier way to use it legally. It's not a very simple process. But anyways, guys, for some reason you actually watch this to the end. God bless you. I really appreciate it. It's hard to sit there and watch somebody ramble. I know that. So if you fall in love with my content at some point, I really appreciate it. So, like I said, stick together, guys. We're in it. We're in it to win it. We're not going to give up. So, God bless you. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.